Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone, for mixing and mingling in our chat. I'm going to stop this music just a moment. Okay. Now we're going to start having our conversation with Miss Carrie Bock. Bock. So happy to have her here. Let me see about, I also have, let me, just a second. I have one. There we go.
There we are.
Now it's us. Okay. Awesome. Yes. All right. So Carrie is here as part of the Local Wonder series. Carrie is a wonder to behold in the Nashville business ecosystem here in Nashville. Now, people don't consider counselors to be business, like they don't think of us as business owners or entrepreneurs, but we are. Like a lot of us have private practices. Even counselors don't even consider themselves to be entrepreneurs, but Carrie is one of the ones that get it, and actually has made waves in the community with how she serves. And so I'm so happy to have her here to learn more about her story, learn more about how she manages her whole life and everything that has happened. Because I know she has so many gems to drop. She is definitely a wonder to behold. So Carrie, so happy to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I do feel like it's a little too warm to be having a fireside chat, though. It is August.
Well, I wasn't outside anyway. I was in the house, so it's pretty much a chat.
There you go.
The thing is, you bring the fire. That's what it is.
Oh, okay. Oh, watch out. You've got red in your hair, though. And red nails. I don't know. You might be bringing the fire.
Oh yeah. You know that to be true. Okay. Okay. So, Carrie, tell us more about you. Give us just the preliminary things, and then we can dig deep into who Carrie is.
Okay. Well, I am a licensed professional counselor, and I have had my private practice by the Well Counseling since 2017. I'm also a podcast host of Hope for Anxiety and OCD, which actually started that during the pandemic last year in 2020. So it's still a new venture, having been working at it for about a year now. I'm also working on some online digital content that I hope to give out pretty soon and have people buy, hopefully. So kind of some different things in the works behind the scenes. I also got married during the pandemic, which was super fun and exciting. And I have 2 crazy cats named Lilo and Stitch. My counseling practice is fully online, so that's a little bit different. I don't have an office anymore, but it's been so liberating and so freeing, and I do not regret that at all, that decision to go fully online. My clients are really benefiting from it, and I work mostly with people who have anxiety and OCD and childhood trauma. So those were my specialty areas.
Oh, so childhood trauma as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So let's talk more about the journey of starting by the well. Like, what caused you to go into private practice and not work, in affiliation with another organization or community mental health, or like what caused you to go into private practice and start your own business?
Well, it was actually a really uncomfortable situation. It wasn't something that I wanted to do at the time. I wasn't looking to start a business. However, I was in a group practice, and some terms of the group practice were changing. And I knew that I wasn't comfortable with the new terms and how much basically I would be required to pay for office space there and to be a part of that group practice. So I really evaluated it for myself and decided that the best thing for me to do would be to go into business for myself. And I had a couple supportive friends who were already in private practice. And I said, hey, do you think I can do this? And they said, oh, yeah, absolutely, you can do it. So that gave me the push and the encouragement that I needed. I had certainly thought about it in the past, but didn't have the capital really to start it. Now, I had, by the time I started my own private practice, I actually had a full caseload, which was just a huge blessing for me, that all I had to do was move the people. So I moved them about 5 miles away, found a cute little office space and went for it. And the rest is history. I've moved, offices one time, and then now I'm fully online. So
Excellent. So let's talk about making tough decisions. So it wasn't, like you said, it wasn't something that you anticipated, but you had to pivot and do something else.
yeah. I think I relied heavily on my faith regarding it. I really believe that I prayed a lot about that decision. And certainly it was a calculated risk, like with anything that we do in business. Sometimes we have to make calculated risk. And honestly, at that point in time, my risk was lower because, like I said, I already had an income coming in from these clients. They all stayed with me, as I moved out of the group practice. So I didn't have to worry about like them being sucked into the group or anything of that nature. They all followed me to the new place, and I opened on June the 1st, and I had a full day that day, of course, which like never happens to people in private practice, right? So that was just super exciting. And I think it was just confirmation, like, yeah, I did the right thing. I made the right decision. So when I was looking at it before and I was thought, okay, well, I'm going to have to pay for office space and I'm going to have to build up and all of that, I just didn't have the money to put into it, months or, years before when I was looking at starting a private practice. I didn't have that capital to go, okay, well, I can sit on this office space for a few months while I bring in clients or wait for insurance stuff to be approved. I didn't have that with this. I was able to kind of move seamlessly and still bring in the income, which was great.
So you made the point of you'd already built up relationships.
Mm-hmm.
You've built up clientele that moved with you. So that speaks a lot about who you are, because they have to feel comfortable to follow you wherever you go, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that you already had built a practice within, even though you were under the umbrella of someone, you had ownership there so that you could easily just transition them to another location.
Sure.
And you keep talking about capital. Before, I didn't have the capital. A lot of entrepreneurs are there, like they're still working part jobs in order to get capital in order to launch their business. But the way that you did it was I sat under the umbrella of somewhere, built my clientele, and then when that umbrella got shaky, you said, okay, let's hit the road because this is not for us. We're gonna go over here and we're gonna work it out. But there was also security there because you had people who were rooting for you, and they were like, yeah, okay, fine, we'll go with you. Sure. I understand that because that's exactly how I moved into my own private practice. Is I had a group, I had people that they would follow me. Actually, they followed me like 3 times because I was just like, it's not working here. Let's go over here. Oh, it's not working. They're like, what's happening? Look, it's hard out here. Just come with me. So that's awesome. I want to talk about being fully online. That decision.
Oh gosh, yeah, that was huge. It was a huge decision, and that one was fueled by a few different things. So I kind of played around in the pandemic with some risk, right? Some new ideas for my business, and I thought, we're already all online anyway. How can I attract people? Can I attract clients from different places in Tennessee? right?
Yeah.
So I would, I had a Psychology Today listing, and I played around with the zip codes on my Psychology Today listing, and I put up different zip codes. And in fact, I put up different addresses, and I took my address off there, and I just thought, let me try to see if I can get some clients, in Cookeville, or clients outside of Chattanooga or whatever. And what I found was that I was able to attract clients from different places that were open to telehealth, that were looking for that as an option, and who are also dealing with, the issues that I work with. So by the time that it was time for me to give up my office, I really calculated that decision. It was like, okay, well, let's look at my clientele right now. How many of them are within driving distance now of my office? And I would say probably a very small percentage were in that, maybe a small percentage were within 30 minutes driving distance to the office. And to me, 30 minutes is kind of a long time to drive to see your therapist anyway, because that sucks up a whole hour. You're there and then you're 2 hours gone, because you're an hour in the car and you're an hour in therapy about. So at that, and none of my clients were asking to come back in the office. None of them really, maybe one or two were like, when are you going to be back in the office? Or are you going to go back in? Most of the people found that for them, being able to do teletherapy, it just allowed them to engage in therapy easier, because they were working from home already. They could just stop what they were doing, get on a session. We have our session, have our wrap up, and they could go back to work. Or they could visit me on their lunch break. They could log out of work early, or they could log out and log back in. There was so much more flexibility for them than having to be tied down to an office. And so when that decision came along, I definitely did question it. I thought, oh gosh, what if I'm making like the worst decision of my life? Because I will sometimes occasionally have people say, are you only online, or are you going to go back in the office? Even though I have it, all over my website. But I know that those aren't my clients. Those aren't my people. And I do have other people that will contact me, and they'll say, hey, I'm really interested in telehealth. I really think that that's the best thing for me. That's the only way I'm going to be able, with my busy work schedule, that's the only way I'm going to be able to attend therapy. And so we're opening up access for people that haven't had access, either because maybe they're in a rural area, they might not have a lot of therapists near them, or they know the therapist personally near them, and so they don't want to see them for therapy. And we're opening up access for busy working professionals, which is really awesome. I'm excited about it. I'm pumped. I love telehealth.
Yes.
Yeah.
Something that you said is issues that I work with.
Mm-hmm.
So that means that you know your particular niche,
right,
and your client. So tell me about that, and how did you get to be very much understanding of knowing that?
It's really evolved over time as some of my interests and passions have changed. I used to work with children as well, and I don't anymore. I just kind of allowed that to drop off, and just really felt like, okay, maybe I'm getting a little bit burnt out on that, or I feel like that season is over for me. So it's really been a process over time. This year, I made the decision, as I had my podcast for Christians, I really felt like my messaging and marketing for my practice should be more towards Christians, even though I see people who aren't Christians, who are atheists or agnostics, or, maybe they have a different faith. But for me, like, being authentic with who I am as a strong Christian, it just made sense for me to just put it out there. So now I just say, hey, I'm a Christian therapist that works with people who have anxiety and OCD due to, really wounding childhood experiences that they've experienced in life. And so as we go back and we work on those wounding childhood experiences, their anxiety and their OCD gets better. So that's the approach and the type of clientele that I work with.
And when you talk about it, you're very confident, and that goes into your own pitch. And because you're confident in that, then of course that's what you attract. You attract people who say, okay, well, this is what she does, and this is where I'm going to go to get that particular service. And I think that as for entrepreneurs, it's important to streamline down exactly and be clear on what you're offering.
Yeah. And, a lot of times we feel exclusive, but I've heard people say, good marketing is exclusive because that person that you're there for, they're going to look at your website and they're going to say, oh, she just like, she gets me like down
Yes.
here. Like she understands. And so then even coming into the interaction, they're already more comfortable with you. I have a short little video on my website that talks a little bit about, who I am and what I do. And people often comment, I really like that video on your website. That just helped me feel more comfortable about reaching out for help. So sometimes we think that things have to be big, and sometimes it's the small things that really help our business.
She gets me. That's wonderful. And that says
Yeah.
a lot about even safety. Like, in order to go into relationship, to like, know, and trust a person, they have to know that she gets me.
Yeah.
I have kind of circumstance as well. Like, people come to me and say, yeah, you are the one that's going to be able to help me. Okay, well then I don't have to sell you on anything that you already
Right.
have decided for yourself. This is what our relationship is going to be, and it's easier to move
Right.
them, right? If they're
Mm-hmm.
safe, to like bring in the pieces of whatever, especially if you're talking about childhood trauma. Let's talk about that a little bit. Like, tell me a scenario of childhood trauma causing anxiety and OCD.
Well, sometimes people are anxious and they'll come in and they'll say, okay, I've got all these body sensations going on, like my heart's racing, or I get really nervous in social situations, or, sometimes I have these experiences where I can't breathe or I have a panic attack. And they'll tell you, you know what, my life is good. Like overall, my life is pretty good. I've got a supportive relationship at home, like a spouse or a partner. I've got a good job. Like, there's really no reason like I should be freaking out. And a lot of times it's gets trauma gets stored, in our nervous system, in our brain, in our body. It's very physiological a lot of times. And so if we don't target those areas, then we can't really heal from those body sensations that are coming from those places of like childhood woundedness. And so a lot of times, people may come in and say, I want to be more confident at work, or I want to be able to be comfortable in social situations, interactions where I have to meet new people. And as we're able to kind of work through some of the things that happened in their past, where there was bullying or abuse, they're able to work through those things and develop that confidence to be able to go into those situations more comfortably.
So I love that you take this pathway. So you say, "Hey, you have anxiety." That's the very first thing that's on top. You
Right.
can recognize that, and you're willing to say that, "Hey, it's apparent that you have OCD." Like, because you're doing behaviors that's saying that. That's
Hmm.
surface. Let's dig deep into core of what happened, right?
Right.
What happened here? Because something happened here, and that's that going down deep into them. But they have to have someone like you who they chose first, right?
Sure.
And they feel safe to do that work, because that's some work.
It is. It is. And it's not always, big traumas like abuse, or sometimes it is, but sometimes it's a little thing. Sometimes it's just, I was that person that had to care for everybody else in the family and nobody cared for me. Or I didn't get
Carrie,
any.
don't start no stuff now. Okay, sorry.
Sometimes it's, I didn't get the validation of my feelings, so I don't feel like I can share my feelings with the significant others in my life because
Hello,
nobody
entrepreneur.
because when I was a kid, people were like, oh, just toughen up and get on over it, you know and so those are wounds. Those are childhood wounds. They're not like, the bullet holes of trauma, but they still impact us and usually come out in our relationships. So it's important for people to be aware of that in business, how our childhood relationships have bled over into our adult relationships, because that's common.
Our adult relationships, even how we do business,
Sure.
because if you haven't really you don't understand your relationship with yourself and what happened to you, then it may be hard for people to authentically know you, to want to work with you, and to
Right.
do business with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Woo,
It's a process, really opening yourself
Carrie.
up to success and failure, right? Like when you are vulnerable in your, whether it's in your relationships or in your business, it's like you're opening yourself up for potential good outcomes and potential bad outcomes.
Carrie. Woo. Do you know how many people, startups, entrepreneurs need? They recognize they have anxiety. Yes, they do. They can say, I got
Yeah.
anxiety. Because everybody got anxiety. They be talking about how to have anxiety. But they're not willing to do, well, they haven't found a safe person like you to do that really dig that work that's hard and it's deep,
Yeah.
and identifying it because it's scary. It happened in the past, and when it happened in the past, you didn't have any power,
Right.
possibly. Which kind of goes back into you being interested in working with children, because you're actually working with the inner child of people.
I am. Yeah. Yeah. Everything, everything kind of intersects and comes together. It's so true. It's so true. Yeah. I mean, I do still work with children. I have conversations with people's inner child, all the
All day
time.
long.
Yeah. So, I mean, yes, everything, that we go through, I believe it's for a reason. And, we're like, oh, if I didn't go through that, I wouldn't have met that person. Or if I didn't have that experience, I wouldn't have done this. And it all kind of gets used together. So, yes.
Oh my goodness, Carrie, I'm looking at the time. You know what? Okay, I'm gonna have to have. I love having my therapist on here. Oh, it's so good, because that's the issue that's happening with lots of startups, entrepreneurs in their success, and them being profitable in their business. So can you tell me about your success, and tell me what tools and tricks and things that you use specifically to get you to be successful, and the things that you're doing, and how you're managing your own self?
Yeah. That's a lot of questions, but you know,
I know. Yeah. Okay. Just
and
answer
in 2
whatever.
minutes, Carrie. Yeah.
I got so many.
For me, obviously, like since I'm an online therapist, having a strong web presence is really important for me. I've run some Google ads recently. That was a risk. Is it going to work? Is it going to not? It ended up in my situation paying off. Having Psychology Today for marketing, really networking with other therapists. That's been another thing that I've done more this year, is gone to some networking groups and put myself out there and say, hey, this is who I work with, and this is what I do. And so if you run across clients that you don't really feel like that's your wheelhouse, you can send them to me, or if you're full. And so I have had some therapists do that. I have, older connections with therapists that I've worked with before in the past that have referred me people. So all of these different things I think have helped contribute to my success in terms of gaining clients. Just really being willing to try new things has been the biggest thing as far as my success as an entrepreneur, because it's hard. It is scary. It's stressful to put yourself out there and to say, is this going to work? Is it not? Sometimes we have, things that don't cost us a whole lot of money, but can make a major pivot in our business. So for me, that was like the Google ad. With what I spent on that, it was kind of like, well, if I did one session of therapy, that's going to make up that money that I spent on the Google ad. So it's worth it to me. If I attract one client and have one session, it'll all even out and it'll be good. And so that worked out. As far as, I think you asked about, like, what do I do to take care of myself? Is that what you're saying? For self-care? I really try to make sure that I don't have too much on my plate at one time. Really try to focus in on certain things and say, okay, what's most important in this season right now? So like, for example, right now I'm in a recording season for my podcast. I'm trying to record enough episodes to get through the end of the year, so that once I record these episodes this month, and I'm going to end on September 1st, and then I will have September, October to really focus on, I'm having a webinar in September. I'm hoping to focus on some writing towards the end of this year. And at least I know that my podcast episodes will be taken care of. So lots of learning, lots of growth along the way, but just trying to figure out, how do I make sure that I have time with my husband? Because that's a very important person in my life. And so we take walks sometime in the evening. How do I have time to just sit back and watch a good TV show every once in a while and spend time with friends? So just trying to prioritize all those different things in my life and not be, I'm not a person that likes to be overscheduled at all. That stresses me out. So making sure that my schedule is balanced.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Carrie, for your time. We have an audience member, and if you have any questions, this is the time to place it in the chat, and we'll be happy to answer it. One thing that was said was great solutions, Carrie, to provide for your client. And then another thing that was said was that you're willing to be okay saying not my ideal client.
Yeah.
These are great thoughts. One thing that I want to take away is that your marketing should be geared towards having someone say, they get me. They get me. So you're speaking to the people who are who are looking for you. They're waiting for you and looking for you. And balancing and using time management as a way to manage anxiety, and also to go inside yourself and maybe even have a therapist or someone to help you go there and in search of your inner child about what happened to you, what happened that is causing this anxiety or OCD that's showing up, or any other depression or any other thing that's happening in your life. What's happened that's causing you to behave this way? And then how is it affecting your business? Is so important. So I don't have any other questions. So Carrie, this is the time for you to make any announcements about what's going on with Carrie and how they can get in contact with you and those kind of things.
Sure. Well, I would love it if people are interested in listening to my podcast on Hope for Anxiety and OCD. And that website is just www.hopeforanxietyandocd.com. We just published our 40th episodes, and that was actually life lessons that I learned from podcasting. There were so many things, so many ways that I grew as a person, as a business owner. I talk about comparison in there. It was just a really good episode. I also have episodes on all kinds of different topics, different types of therapy, mindfulness, and there's a lot of good material in there and some good blog posts on the website. So I hope that people will check that out if that's their genre. It's really for, struggling Christians to reduce shame, increase hope, and develop healthier connections with God and others. So that's the goal behind it.
And it sounds like it's a way for you to heal as well and grow.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And you probably can notice that in the work.
Yeah. I also have a webinar coming up on September the 11th, which is a free webinar, and it's for dealing with difficult thoughts for Christians. So there'll be information about that.
Oh, I didn't know about that, Carrie. Okay, sorry. Well, a webinar dealing with difficult thoughts for Christians.
Yeah, and I'm still working on the sign up, but it's going to be at hopeforanxietyandocd.com/webinar. So I don't have all the sign up details there, but hopefully by the time people are watching this, or if they go back next week, it will be there. So I'm excited about that.
Oh, I'm excited. This is going to be a good one. There's lots of difficult conversations that are not being had.
Right. There's lots of difficult thoughts that Christians are kind of told just deal with that and just say something positive to yourself instead. So we're going to unpack some of that, and it'll be really good, I think.
Toxic positivity. Yeah, that's a thing. Yeah. So, thank you so much, Carrie, for coming and doing our Fireside Chat for the Local Wonders series. You are definitely a wonder to behold. And I just so sad that time went by so fast.
Yeah.
It didn't feel like it at all. And but I really would love to have, I think I want to do a thing where I have a panel of counselors to come. I think that might be fun. Anyway, thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. Thank you, Carrie.
Thank you for having me.